There we go. Welcome everyone to the South Central STEM Hub's community conversation on STEM equity in the community. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Sarah Derry. I am the South Central STEM Hub Region Manager for the Iowa Governor's STEM Advisory Council, and my office is at Drake University in Des Moines. I'm just going to set the stage really briefly about why STEM in Iowa and why it is important to make sure that all children have an opportunity to engage with STEM learning and connections to careers. And then I'm going to turn it over to our four experts for the day. I hope you have your mugs handy if you got registered in time, because we are going to toast to the good things to come. So just to set the stage, if I can move on to the next slide, here we go. Really, why are we talking about STEM today? Because STEM skills equal higher pay and more job opportunities. So we know that jobs that require STEM skills have higher median earnings than jobs in Iowa that do not require STEM skills. And the other part of that is there are also more unfilled STEM job opportunities for individuals with STEM skills than those that don't have STEM skills. So when you combine opportunities for higher pay plus more job opportunities in general, having a workforce that is rich with every individual we can have with STEM skills is incredibly important to the Iowa economy, as well as being good for individuals, because there's more opportunity to have a career that pays well. However, in the state of Iowa, we have disparities between student interest and gender, student interest in STEM and gender. So I'm just going to share three quick graphs with you all because I love data and I think it helps set our sense of urgency and purpose for our time together today. The first one you're looking at is students reporting of their interest in STEM, very interested in a STEM career. The blue line is boys, the red line is females, and the across from left to right on this graph is the grade level. So you're starting at third grade on the left side and going all the way through 11th grade on the right. And what you see in the trend line there is that student reported interest in having STEM careers. There are differences in gender. So students identifying as male start higher and retain that greater interest as related to students who identify as female. And as students get older or move up in the grade levels, that difference between the genders increases. So we're seeing an even greater disparity in female identifying students by the time they're in 11th grade. Here's a very similar graph, only addressing racial disparities. So this is a similar graph in that you're looking at student reported interest in STEM by grade level. So the left side is third graders, all the way through, as you go to the right side, you go to 11th graders. And then the different colored lines represent different racial groups. So the blue line is Asian, the red line is African American students, the green line is Hispanic students, and the white line, the purple line is white students. And this is a slide that keeps me up at night because if you look in third grade, African American students start with the highest interest in STEM. And by the time they are 11th graders, that slope is dramatically lower and they end up being the lowest self-reporting group of students by race as it accounts for interest in STEM. And then today we're also going to address rural disparities in STEM. So this is a slightly different way of measuring, but what we're looking at here are public awareness of STEM, and the lower right-hand corner box there is awareness of STEM from 2013 to 2019 based on where the individual lives. And so the green line is in a large city, the orange line is in a small town, and the gray line are individuals who live on a farm or in a rural community. And you can see that those who live in a rural community have a lower incidence of awareness of STEM. And so how does this all translate? All of these graphs sort of translate to this need that we have to make sure that all of the individuals in Iowa have an opportunity and access to enriching, exciting STEM opportunities so that they have access to experiences and learning that helps build in them the opportunity and access to more job opportunities and higher pay here in our state. And so with that, today we're going to try to address some ways of, well, what can we do to make sure that all kids have access? And I'm going to turn the floor over now to Dr. Nadelia Gomez. Nadelia, will you please introduce yourself briefly, and I'm going to, then I'll ask you a few questions.
Good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here with you all. Sarah, thank you so much. The opportunity to introduce myself and then answer some of the questions hopefully will be beneficial to everyone today. My name is Nadelia Gomez. I am the Executive Director of the Iowa Agritech Accelerator. My role there is to select a handful of ag tech entrepreneurs every year and provide them the opportunity to develop their business ideas alongside mentors, experts in agriculture, engineering, business development, hopefully bringing new innovations for the Midwest farm. And the topic of STEM and diversity and equity is very, very dear to me because I am a Latin female in a scientific space and have experienced firsthand how students respond to seeing someone of a different background on the stage, talking to them behind a lab desk. So it is very important to me to take this opportunity and any of the other future opportunities that Sarah might provide for me to share with you what are some ways that we can engage youth and talent in that STEM engagement.
Thank you, Nadelia. So to that end, the first question we have for you is, why do we need more diverse young people inventing and innovating?
Well, I will summarize the reasons into 2 bullet points, but then I'll give you a little bit of background and detail on why my thought goes to those 2 things. First of all, inventing is all about new ideas and different perspectives. If you get accustomed to doing the same thing over and over in the same way, it is likely that you will lose the opportunity to be innovative. The second reason is that role models for others are very important in the progression of innovation. Even if you come into a new area with all of the expertise and you have a new idea, over time, it is just normal to become solidified in a set of beliefs around the world that surrounds you. So by being a role model with a diverse background for the new generation of talent that is coming through that pipeline of innovation, you ensure that there are others coming along that will continue to bring those new ideas forth. So in my opinion, the combination of needing invention to be about newness, novelty, different perspectives, and the fact that just over time, we tend to solidify around certain ideas, and you need those role models to put forth the new generation of talent. I think that that's, for me, compelling argument to say that we do need more diverse young people inventing and innovating. If I look specifically at the area of agriculture that I live in and day out, the opportunities are, yes, associated with higher pay, more jobs, indeed. But there is also an intersection between how food is produced and the food that is on our table. And that alone involves a different of perspective. Food is produced often in rural areas. It is consumed in large proportions in high density areas. So when you're talking about developing the solutions that are going to address food safety, food availability, you want to cut across those divides and ensure that there are individuals at the table that can address those issues in a collaborative manner. Diversity is important to doing that. If you look about the intersection between the production of food and how important it is for us to have clean water and healthy soil and clear air, all of those things also connect. And you might have scientists on the spaces of food production. You can have scientists on how that food ensures to be healthy and of high quality, and even how that entire system results in clean air, clean water, and healthy soil. So it is absolutely important. It is a thread that connects us all. We all eat. And therefore, I think diversity is very important with areas like that, where it's not just one sector that can make all the decisions and create all the answers, but you need scientists at the table representing all of those various perspectives.
Thank you so much, Nadelia. And I just want to make a note to everybody, the chat is open for your questions, and in the last 2 minutes of each speaker's time, we're going to address any questions that come up. So feel free to be populating the chat with any questions you have for our experts. Nadelia, in the 2 minutes we have left, I have 2 questions for you. One, what words of opportunities do kids need in order to have the courage to try and fail and try again? And then the second one is, and you can sort of wrap these together if it helps, what process or projects can help a parent, a child, or a teacher to get started?
Absolutely. I will wrap both of those in this comment. We need to be mindful of not overemphasizing only the successes. There has to be a safe environment for children to fail, not know something, create a hypothesis, and be asked, how do you know that that is true? And have them go through that exercise of figuring it out. I think that if we reward successes too much and we penalize failure, the trajectory of the scientific life is completely messed up, because failure is part of that exercise. And you need to iterate many times through that process. What you want to emphasize, the process, the words, your actions, is that there is a safe environment to ask a question and then to experiment. Put forth a hypothesis and ask, how do you know that that is true? And especially in a time and age like now, where that type of question gets a little blurred with so many sources of information, not all relevant or reputable, it is absolutely important that we help our children develop that ability to fail and embrace the process of experimentation with a hypothesis that can be tested.
Thank you so much, Nadelia. I really appreciate it. And speaking of having the courage to ask questions, I just hope everybody feels courageous, and we can get back to some of those questions. If they come up a little bit later, we can revisit them. But Amber, am I correct that I don't see any in the chat at this time?
No, that's correct. There's no questions.
All right, well, that timing was perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Gomez. We're going to slide right into our rural expert. Maury Heggy is a high school science educator, computer science guru. Well, I'll let you introduce yourself, but I'll stop there and let you take over. And she is our next expert. Take it away, Maury, with an introduction, and then I'll come back with your question.
You were doing such a great job introducing me. I almost don't think I can do justice introducing myself. I'm Maury Heggy. I live in Oskaloosa, Iowa, but right now I currently teach at North Mahaska, which is in New Sharon, Iowa. I've been teaching, this is my 9th year teaching, And over those 9 years, I have taught at all rural schools, just varying sizes of rural schools. So I don't know that I necessarily would consider myself an absolute expert on rural schools, but I do have lots of experience there. So.
Thank you. So just to jump right into the questions, tell us a little bit about the landscape of the difficulty of getting certified STEM teachers in rural classrooms, and what impact does that have on learning?
So I'm sure most of us, the majority of us, are all aware that this is a nationwide teacher shortage, especially in the STEM area. It's hard to get certified STEM teachers no matter where you go, but rural schools really get hit hard. And so not only do we have, fewer people going into teaching STEM fields, we have, those retiring or leaving to go into industry. And with rural schools, it really, to entice someone to go teach at a rural school is a feat in itself. Oftentimes, these rural schools just are not competitive when it comes to salaries and benefits packages. And if you're a first year or going to be a first year teacher, you have those student loans that you're trying to keep in mind. And so sometimes everything boils down to that pay. But on top of that, often you are the department. So right now I'm fortunate enough that I'm one of 2 science teachers at my school, but the school that I taught at previously, I was the science department for grades 7 through 12. So it's quite a lot of work. You're teaching all the preps for your area, your content area. And then, couple that with, beginning teachers. It's a lot of work. And so often just getting people to even apply for some of those jobs is next to impossible. So a lot of times in these very small rural schools in Iowa, we're seeing that we are getting either, retired teachers who are willing to do long-term subbing to try to fill the gaps until you can get a qualified applicant, or you're getting people who may not be certified and are looking to do a provisional, which also, couple that with the challenges of doing, a course load of work to get your teaching license on top of, teaching. It's a lot of work. So that turnaround just keeps growing exponentially in these very small rural schools.
Thanks, Maury. So after painting that rather bleak picture, what can we do to get more students to consider a career in education? And could you please couple that with what programs are available for rural educators?
Absolutely. So, teacher recruitment, whether we think about it or not, really starts at those middle school and high school age levels. We really do a great job recruiting for a lot of other STEM areas, but I don't think we toot our own horn enough as teachers about, how great our jobs really are. I know this year has provided a fair share of challenges for us, but we really just need to add, when we talk about STEM careers, we really need to talk about there's got to be someone to teach STEM and provide, shine a light on the teaching field. And so, just really talk up the teaching field as much as we do being a chemist or being a software engineer. We're right up there, whether we want to believe it or not, we are right up there in the STEM fields with all of those other professions. So that's huge. I also think a big part of it is sharing our experiences as teachers with our students. There's a lot of cool opportunities I've had that I wouldn't have had if I didn't go into teaching STEM. There's a lot of different, for instance, the internship program. You know, if we have an internship, really share those experiences, but also share it from the teacher side of things. Hey, I get to go out and explore all these other professions while also being a teacher. So I can wear more hats than just one as a teacher. Just really opening up our youth's eyes to what the teaching profession is. I think sometimes they see us get stressed and they understand, like with COVID going on, they understand all of the extra hoops that we're jumping through and the stress that's on us. And so we really need to paint the good side of teaching, you know, at the end of the day, what keeps us in it, and really talk to the kids about that. Another, like right now I teach mainly high school. And so I always like to talk to my students about my journey. I didn't start out going to school to be a teacher. That's just where my path ended up, and I'm ever so happy it did. But I like sharing my journey and why I started out in engineering and what, you know, made me change my course and all the different paths I took to end up as a teacher. I think sometimes it's just not as glorified as a lot of the other professions. So really talking ourselves up is a huge thing. But as far as programs are concerned, as a rural teacher, you really have to get creative on how to bring really enriched science and any STEM to your students. As a rural school, we don't have the money to spend on some of the really cool instruments or kits that some of the other schools do. So over the years, a big part is networking. You cannot imagine how important, I would say, networking has been to me being able to bring the quality of science I've been able to my students. You meet another teacher and maybe you can share costs of different instruments, or, hey, I'll let you borrow these micro pipettes if, you know, you'll let me borrow this kit. I've done a lot of that bartering, I guess you would say. One of the classes I was able to bring to North Mahaska was microbiology. And so the materials alone are very, very costly. But luckily, I've networked with some teachers who also offer microbiology. And so they have been gracious enough to let our school borrow different things, or if they're updating their equipment, even being able to buy at a cheaper price different instruments has been a great help. So that networking is amazing. Along with networking is the fact that you never know, especially like with companies in the area, companies who are able to donate, whether it's money for new equipment, or sometimes you have an industry that they have to get rid of maybe beakers or different scientific tools and instruments because they don't fit their quality standards, but they work just fine for a high school chemistry lab. So just really networking and going out there and really putting a plug in for your school and your students has been huge. The scale up, I'll put a plug in for the scale ups. They are absolutely amazing. Those internships are amazing opportunities, not only because it gives a teacher a different perspective, but it also helps with that networking. Again, you never know the people that you meet, you never know how you might be able to help them in the future, or vice versa, they might be able to help you. So it's really crucial. And then the ones that we don't always just necessarily think about partnering up with are libraries. A lot of times libraries are able to get different resources that you can share with your students to really give them that enriched science curriculum.
Thank you so much. So the power of the network and the power of storytelling. Thanks very much, Maury. I am going to, oh, we have a question in the chat. Okay, so there is a question about utilizing technology to support science teaching and pairing remote teachers with local mentors to help alleviate the current shortage as a bridge to recruit more teachers into the field. Yeah, thank you, Barb, for that comment. Does anybody have anything they want to elaborate on that before we move on? All right, cruising right along. Next up is Dr. Kimberly Wayne. And Kim, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Good morning, sir. I'm Dr. Kimberly Wayne, and I'm so glad to be here and listening on all this rich conversation. So I am, during the day, I'll say I'm an engineer during the day, and I work with servers and cloud-based computing for financial industries. And then in the evenings and Saturdays, I run a science program for girls called Jules Academy, and I also serve on the State Board of Ed. And Dr. Wise, how you doing? Okay, all right.
Thank you. Yeah, your hand is in many, many parts of this STEM network that's so important. So launching into our first question for you, how has systemic racism led to disparities in recruiting and retaining educators of color? And how has it caused disparities in the opportunity gap?
Okay, so guys, I got like the hardest questions. They're the most difficult and heaviest, but we'll just keep it, I like to keep things very simple. And so one of the key things is just making sure we have priorities to it, making sure it's a priority within our organizations. So for an example, is it something that we measure and that we are constantly putting in the forefront, and you can forget about it, depending on what your team is made up, what the priorities are. You can really, when you lose that priority, it creates, and it's a system. So, there's so many aspects to the system. And so if you lose priority, or you have priority, but it's not really, it's like, as I say, wallpaper. It doesn't really mean anything. There's no action behind it, and really doing a true post-mortem and monitoring it. And then, like the team, one of the key things is when there's such a systemic problem, our team, do we have groupthink? In the essence of, do we have people that's going to challenge us to always continuously improve? So I see this in corporate America, and then I see it in the somewhat nonprofit, but it's on a much local scale. And then I see it a little bit in our government entities. Is just making sure we challenge us to make sure that we, Dr. Deary showed this data on how the students are, most everyone, demographics for interest in STEM is all the same about third grade. But something has happened every grade, every demographic, it decreases. So what are those influences that impact their opinion about STEM, and it just totally drops, in a very steep curve. So lack of priority, and then when we have a lack of priority, then it can result into a lack of representation. So I'm the chair of the equity committee on the State Board of Ed, and we have 17 members, and 9 of those are students, seniors and juniors, and they in high school. And one of the students has said, and then they began to agree, and it just kind of was an epiphany for me. They said, I don't think I've ever had anyone that looked like me in my K-12 education. And it was, mind you, at that time, it was mostly Central Iowa students. Now we have almost every student represented in the state. But in last spring, and I thought, you've never seen anyone that looked like you? And mind you, this is multiple demographics. But and this is even in the higher populated communities. So if I don't have anyone that looks like me, and I'm in, the representation just matters, and study shows that. And then, and it's not just educators, but also it's a representation in the leaders, because one of the things that you'll hear in some of the districts is that the educators will say, "Well, I don't want to lose my job." So then you need to have representation also in administration, the ones that can really they have muscle, if I can say that. So representation, priority, and is key. Representation and priority.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wayne. So the next one is, how can teachers make sure they're providing inclusive communities for learners? And I just want to give you a little, your audio is kind of going in and out a little bit. So if you just want to keep the mic close to your, because you're just getting louder and softer. We can hear you, but
okay.
Just to be aware of that. Okay, so teachers, how can they make sure they're providing inclusive communities for learners?
Sure. One of the things in my dissertation, it deals with how to keep young women and minorities, underrepresented minorities in the STEM pipeline, starting in 4th grade all the way finishing undergraduate degree. And one of the significant factors that we found that was creating a welcoming environment, very basic. Just when they come into the classroom, when they come into the school, is it a welcoming environment? And that goes for any student, yeah? So, and it's, I don't really think any of this has to be very difficult to do. And all we do, it's really just making sure. So how do we make sure it's a welcoming environment? We can look at, when we're taught about looking at our students' body language, we're taught even the staff, you know, do they feel welcome? And, you know, in corporate, we do, and I think they do also, I know they do this on the state level too. We do, they call it like kind of like a peer survey, where you can find out how your students are doing, what is their conditional, what is their feedback, and we do that also in corporate America. And you know, it's so funny because when some of the results come back shocking, the C-suite executives are like, "What? I can't believe this!" And it's the same with when we do our surveys, our peer surveys, and also the student surveys within the districts and around the state. Sometimes it comes shocking, and most times it's not. And so one of the key things in regards to looking at teachers and make sure that the students feel that we make sure that we promote inclusive environment is they have to feel welcome, and then building relationships. I know how much you care based on first you build a relationship with me. So when you build that positive relationship with that student, and also if you can, also their parent, it goes a long way. You know, it does. Marie, our educator, Marie, shaking her head, yes, it's just huge because, and it goes in any, not even in education, it's in every industry. Is where's that building that rapport with one another in that environment. I remember I was in another panel discussion, and it was here locally in Des Moines Public Schools, and one of the educators had mentioned that when there was recess, that the students went out in the hallway, you heard a lot of yelling, and it was not the same. They didn't reflect that behavior when it was in her classroom. And so then when they got in the classroom, it was peaceful and it was productive. And she said, I don't understand why it's just so havoc during the classroom changes. And I told her, I said, it's something about the culture at the school on that school site level. But then when you go into your classroom, it's peaceful and it's productive. Then you have set a certain culture inside your classroom. So if we can create that welcoming and nurturing environment on the site, classroom, and then district and those state, I think you'll start seeing changes, and every student will be welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wayne. So we have about 1 more minute for the last question. What needs to change for all learners to have equitable education environment, in addition to, right, being a priority, making sure that representation reflects all the way up to the leadership, and that the environment and culture is welcoming?
So recently on the state board, the board has just agreed on equity type land statement. And one of the bullet points that we say is that when we are able to, this is what we're striving for, when we're able to collaborate among the students, the educators, administrators, community members, policy members, and stakeholders, essential to success of serving all students in a collective process of creating equitable policies and practices. So when we all can work together and we have all these different stakeholders at the table, and we know at the end of the day that we want to, every student must have equitable access to rigorous learning, and we're working to the same priority, we can do excellent things. We can do entitlement type things.
Thank you so much. You always share like these nuggets of just powerful wisdom that expound beyond the question asked to applying multiple places. Thank you. Thank you so much. Next up, Dr. Ryan Wise. I will let you introduce yourself. Give us the history you want to give us about your career story.
All right. Well, thanks so much for having me on here today, Sarah. I really appreciate it. Dr. Wayne, it's great to see you again. And a lot of my comments are going to echo some of what you said today. But just a quick bit of background about me. I am relatively new to Drake as the Dean of the School of Education. Began in April and then officially as Dean in May after commencement. And prior to serving as Dean at the School of Education, I served as Director of the Iowa Department of Education for about 5 years, which is where I had the opportunity to work with Dr. Wayne as she served on the state board. Prior to that, I also worked in several other roles at the department, and importantly began my career as a high school social studies teacher. So started teaching in Tunica, Mississippi, in a rural community, and then also taught for 3 years in Omaha, Nebraska at Omaha Central. So 2,600 student high school in downtown Omaha. So have kind of spanned rural and urban, worked for 5 years on the Rosebud and Pine Ridge reservations in South Dakota as part of Teach for America, and then internationally for a few years as well. So bring a few different perspectives to this work. But I think one of the most important things I bring is that I had the opportunity to visit about 240 school districts in Iowa during my time as director of the Department of Ed, and over 500 schools. And so seeing this play out in a lot of different contexts, how we work with diverse populations and ensure we have an equitable approach is really near and dear to my heart and important for us as a state.
Thank you. All right, so let's launch right in. What can higher education do to help bridge equity gaps in education and also in the community?
Yeah, so I think there's a few things. I think first it's important that institutes of higher education start within first. So look inside first. Are we building and modeling a diverse community of leaders that supports everyone, right? So I'll go back to what Dr. Wayne said, representation matters. So are we reflecting a more diverse faculty, staff, and student body than we have in the past? And even more important, are we supporting those people of all backgrounds, when they come in to say, you belong here, you matter, and we're going to support your needs? And so I think that's really important. And it needs to be a collective effort. It can't just come from the dean or pockets of faculty or individual staff members. So at the School of Ed, we've created an expanded diversity, equity, and inclusion committee that includes faculty, staff, students, and alums to ensure we're getting a broad perspective on the work. I also think higher education can really do more to take a careful look at its approach to ensuring our students and the leaders and the counselors that we're preparing are prepared to address issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion in their classrooms and in their schools. And this can take a lot of different forms, from equity audits, which I think are really important. Our counseling department is doing this right now, looking at, do they have a diverse representation of authors of studies? We're also doing this in our curriculum library. One of our graduate classes is looking at all of our early reader materials and ensuring that we have a diverse representation of both authors and characters in those books. So are we doing everything we can to prepare our students, and then weaving that throughout all of our courses? So not having these issues be siloed to just a diversity or human relations course, but that really we're addressing these issues in every single course, in every single experience, all along the way. So we actually redid our Intro to Education course this year and focused it heavily on these issues to ensure right from the beginning our students are wrestling with and talking about the issues they'll face in the classroom. And then I also think it means building deeper partnerships with diverse community and school organizations. So I see Michelle on here, Krugulski, who does a great job of this in our student teaching. And I think we've focused on this even more this year in some of our practicum placements. We've built deeper partnerships with neighborhood schools that feed into the Roosevelt High School. So we're ensuring we're really focusing our practicum experiences as well on diverse placements. And then, the last thing I'll say, again, ties back to what Dr. Wayne said. We need to have clear measures of success and metrics that say we're making progress or we're falling behind. And so we are also in the process of redoing our performance measurement system, which we call the balanced scorecard. And we're having more specific measures on how are we doing on both recruiting and supporting students of color in the school.
Thank you. That was a rich response. Moving right on, because we have limited time and I want to make sure we get all your expertise pushed in here. Iowa has pockets of both rural and urban students that fall into the category of high socioeconomic need. What changes can we make in education that work to benefit both?
Yeah, so I think one of the most common misconceptions of education in Iowa is that our rural communities are not racially, ethnically, socioeconomically diverse, and that's just no longer accurate, right? And so I think many of the things that I just mentioned that we're doing at the School of Education can be applied to the school level across the board in rural and urban communities, which includes ensuring that teachers come from diverse backgrounds, that the curriculum is representative of diverse characters and is accessible to and relatable to by all students, and that there's a culture of support. On the socioeconomic needs side, I think one of the challenges that we need to address is ensuring that the level of support available to students and families in rural communities is equitable and comparable to the support that students and families have in larger communities. I've seen some, great examples of schools going beyond their traditional role to meet the holistic needs of students. I've seen school districts like Cardinal of Eldon, Davis County, and there are many others that have worked to address food insecurity, to ensure that students have access to food that they can take home on weekends, that they can bring home in the evenings. And then obviously in the current culture of the pandemic, high-speed internet access and Wi-Fi access is critical. And so I see schools stepping up to support those needs of students and families as well.
Thank you. And the last question in about a minute, what best practices do you have for educators and advocates serving diverse learners in one classroom or via one virtual setting?
So I think when I think of that question, Kendra Colbert, who is one of our staff members, said something that has just stuck with me when talking about issues of diversity and equity. She said, if you don't live it, you have to learn it, right? And so I think it's incumbent upon all of us to really understand the diverse backgrounds that our students bring in and how we can support their needs. And at the same time, we can't let it just sit only in the learning bucket, right? We have to move quickly into action as well. So as we're building this, baseline of knowledge and understanding, we really need to apply it. And I'm going to drop an article into the chat box. Jal Mehta from Harvard wrote just a wonderful article yesterday called Equity Work, Too Much Talk, Too Little Action. And the title is a little deceptive because he does talk about the importance of knowledge and learning, but he gets quickly into it's got to be applied. Professional learning communities need to be testing ideas and pushing because we know from research that actually action comes before belief. So the most profound impact on a teacher's actions come from actually applying those and seeing the differences that happen. It's really hard to just change beliefs in the abstract. You have to apply, see the difference, and then keep that virtuous cycle going.
Beautiful. Thank you. And what a glorious setup to take us into where we apply our conversation to collaborating with others on brainstorming some ideas for action. So the next thing that you all will be doing, I'm in addition to Ryan's article here, I am going to drop into the chat small group discussion questions, if paste will work. Here we go. And I'm going to send everyone now into breakout rooms. You will each have a facilitator. In most of these rooms, it will be one of our speakers. And the other one is going to be with Dr. Deborah Kent, who is a math professor at Drake and willingly volunteered to be another facilitator of that, just to help keep the conversation going. Everyone in the group is certainly responsible for participating and thinking through how are you going to apply your learning to an action within your own circle of influence, and maybe bring others in to amplify the power of your action into a collective that serves more our Iowa future workforce. So with that, I'm going to release you to your breakout rooms for about 8 minutes of conversation. Ready, go. Welcome back, everybody. I'm afraid I made a rookie mistake in that I said 2 minutes, and then I thought I was going to be able to give you 2 more minutes, and I clicked the button, and all of a sudden you only had 1. So my apologies for cutting you short by a minute. The conversations that I jumped in on were rich and wonderful, and thank you for your grace and my apologies for cutting them short. I just wanted to sort of tie this all together a little bit with some action items and supports that the STEM Hub has to offer to you. And I also wanted to take just a minute to, after I had a chance to kind of digest Barb's comment in the chat, one of the things that is sort of conspicuously absent from the formal part of this conversation are our informal partners in education and the great resource that they are. So Barb, thank you for triggering that and adding it to the conversation, because there are extra supports in the communities. We don't have to rely completely on our educators and our business partners, because also we have these rich, enriching real world examples and opportunities in all of our communities to help really ignite excitement, connection, and also that, rigorous learning as well. And so with that, I'm going to sort of transition to, again, this power of the network. And I'll share my screen one last time here to finish up with, we brought up, or our speakers did a lovely job of bringing up this idea of moving from awareness and education into action. And some of the ways that the STEM Hub can help you move through wherever you're at in your STEM action and equity action into awareness, education, or learning. We're going to try to get you on the spectrum somewhere. And so I just wanted to share with you a few of the resources that Connecting with the Hub can offer. My email address is at the top of that slide. And on the awareness and education side, no matter where you are in the spectrum, one of the best ways to customize the support that the Hub can give to you is to have a one-on-one or a small group meeting. Just connect with the STEM Hub, with me, where I can learn about where you are, help me understand where you want to go, and then I can do my best to help connect you either with the council programs or just within the network that supports STEM in Iowa, which includes educators, both formal and informal, as well as our industry partners and policymakers in the state, to really help to address whatever your needs are and meet you where you're at. So no matter where you are on that spectrum, connecting with the STEM Hub, first of all, with an email is the best way to reach me in these pandemic times. But also we have a social media presence. All of that information is down at the bottom of the slide. Tonight we have a live Twitter chat around high school registered apprenticeships. Again, our social media and subscribing to the newsletter is a good way to get information about all these things that I'm going to mention. We also have a podcast called STEM Essential, which are basically interviews with people with various interests in STEM. Because this is the equity group, I would highly recommend, I believe it's maybe even episode 1. Which is an interview with Dr. Eris Winger, who is a just brilliant mathematician of color who is really marching forward on helping to make sure that all students have access and feel empowered in mathematics, which is a great listen. And you can, listen while you're cooking dinner or wiping down all the doorknobs to sterilize everything. Another option is Teachable Moment, which is a small curated list of activities and academic resources, both for educators, non-formal educators, and families. If you're looking for a way to help support the relationships that support student learning, we've put together some activities that are really designed to help fill some of the gaps that we're experiencing because of the pandemic. And then when you're ready to take action, perhaps that's where you're at, again, talking to me and building some connections within the network. We do STEM festival events. So these are designed to connect student learning with Iowa careers and to meet people in the industry. And most of the time these activities are, in a different life, they were with face-to-face and often provided a really great access for learning with students alongside with their parents, which I think is a really important advocacy tool and relationship building tool. Maury mentioned the STEM Scale Up programs. These are materials and activities that we award to educators both in and out of school to help lower the barrier to trying something new in terms of STEM curriculum, STEM activities, depending on the program. And that we'll announce this next year's menu in January. Maury also mentioned the Iowa STEM Teacher Externship program, where we place an educator in a business or an industry in Iowa within, I believe it's 60 miles of their home. It's sort of a Match.com kind of deal where you get to say what you're interested in working in if you're the educator, and the business, if you're the business, you get to say what kind of an educator would work best for the projects that you have. And they work on projects for that industry, but in the 6 weeks in the summer that they're doing this, they're getting paid and building long-term relationships to help carry over into impacting student need. And then the last one that I just want to mention is STEM Best, which is an acronym for Businesses Engaging Students and Teachers. And this is a $25,000 award to a school. It has to be to a school building as the fiscal agent, but bringing in partners in the STEM network to provide authentic learning experiences that are tailored to the community, to the needs of the community, but also to the strengths and resources of the community. So those are just a few of the ways that the STEM Hub can help move you forward, or try to meet you where you're at in terms of providing STEM opportunities that lead students to helping close those disparities that we saw in the graphs at the beginning, in their STEM interest, and hopefully begetting some of their STEM achievement, and growing Iowa's STEM workforce. So that's what I got. Thank you so much for participating. I want to say a special shout out to Lisa Morlock, who is the communicator mastermind behind so much of the organization of this event. Thank you very much, Lisa. And to the small army of individuals who also helped coordinate, even making just this run smoothly, in terms of our breakout session leaders, our speakers, as well as Amber Parkerman and Deborah Kent, who joined us just to help facilitate breakout sessions and monitor the chat so that this all went smoothly. I thank you so much for joining us. With that, go forth and make STEM equitable. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.